The town of Fort Sumner baked beneath a sky the color of bleached bone. The mid-afternoon sun was a merciless, blinding disk, turning the dust-choked streets into a wavy mirage. A hot, persistent wind blew fine grit against the wooden fronts of the general store and the saloon, creating a low, abrasive hiss. The air tasted of alkali and desperation. 4 riders approached from the south, their movements weary and trail-worn. The sight of William H. Ebony, 22, instantly recognizable by his slim build and the notorious pair of Colt .45 revolvers slung low, caused the few citizens visible to retreat quickly indoors. He was the most famous or infamous outlaw in the territory, and his presence promised mayhem. Beside him rode Charlie Bowdre, his face perpetually stoic. Tom O'Folliard, alert and twitchy, scanning every window, and Henry Dirt Jake, whose sheer size and cradled Winchester rifle were intimidation enough. They hadn't ridden into town for rest or revelry. Billy's face was etched with a cold fury that silenced even his talkative companions. They halted their horses outside the old trading post. The squeak of saddle leather was the loudest sound. Billy dismounted, the clink of his star-roweled spurs echoing the tension. The air inside the trading post was slightly cooler but smelled heavily of cured leather, raw coffee beans and dried meat. It was cluttered and dimly lit. Billy walked past the dusty shelves. He wasn't looking for supplies. He found the store owner, Samuel Sam Miller, 40s, a wiry man with a worn apron and the tired eyes of a man who'd seen too many seasons pass too quickly. "Sam, it's been a while," Billy said, his voice surprisingly soft but possessing a hard, underlying edge. Sam looked up, his jaw dropping when he saw the kid. "Billy, Christ almighty, you shouldn't be here. Garrett's men are everywhere. The reward poster is fresh." "I ain't here for the reward, Sam. I'm here because of Jesse." Jesse was Billy's first cousin, a young man who had tried to walk the straight path, ranching cattle near the Pecos. Sam winced, wiping his hands on his apron. "Jesse's dead, Billy. Shot 3 weeks ago, out on his claim. I wrote you a message, sent it down the river with a rider." "I got the message, Sam. It was light on details. I want the whole truth. Who shot Jesse, and why?" Sam nervously glanced toward the window. He lowered his voice, the words tight and reluctant. "It was over land, Billy. Good grazing land that Colonel Maxwell wanted for his cattle empire. Jesse wouldn't sell. Maxwell sent his foreman, Slim Coyne, to run him off. Coyne killed him. Coyne didn't kill him. Coyne beat him badly, broke 3 of his ribs, left him bleeding. But the man who put the bullet in Jesse, the man who finished the job, that was Pat Garrett." Billy froze. The sheriff of Lincoln County, the lawman who was relentlessly hunting him, had murdered his family. The shock was palpable. "Garrett? Why? Garrett is a lawman, not Maxwell's assassin." "It was political, Billy. Garrett needed Maxwell's support for the next election. Jesse's land was the final piece of the bargain. Garrett rode out with Coyne and 2 deputies. They found Jesse wounded, hiding in his barn. Garrett walked right up to him and shot him in the head. Cold blood. Told Coyne to make it look like a rustler's job." Billy closed his eyes briefly. The desert heat suddenly felt like ice. The murder of Jesse wasn't just violence. It was a personal attack on the small amount of family he had left, carried out by the man sworn to uphold the law. "Where's Jesse's woman, Rebecca?" "She's with me. In the back room. She ain't been right since. Won't talk to anyone." She saw it all. Sam led Billy to a small, dark storage room. Rebecca, 20s, fragile and dressed in faded calico, sat huddled on a small stool, clutching a tattered Bible. Her eyes were empty, filled with the dust of grief and trauma. Billy knelt down, removing his hat again. He saw the kinship in her face, the shared bloodline of the deceased. "Rebecca, it's William, Billy. I heard about Jesse." She didn't look up, only mumbled, her voice thin and broken. "The sheriff did it, Billy. He didn't even ask questions. He just stood there tall in his duster, and he told Jesse to stop being foolish. Then he shot him. She finally met his gaze, and her eyes were not empty, but burning with a quiet, desperate plea. They took everything. My husband, my home, my peace. They mocked him, Billy. Pat Garrett mocked him while he died. They said the law was taking what belonged to the law. She gripped the Bible, her knuckles white. I don't want gold, Billy. I don't want safety. I want justice, the real kind. The kind only you can give. Garrett must pay. And Coyne, the man who beat him first. You're my last hope, my only kin. Billy stood up slowly, the weight of the promise settling heavily on his young shoulders. This wasn't just another score or a fight with a rival gang. This was family, honor, and a duel with the most powerful lawman in the territory. Rebecca, I swear on the grave of Jesse that Pat Garrett and Slim Coyne will answer for this. They'll look the sun in the eye when I settle the account. This ain't about being an outlaw anymore. This is about being kin. He put his hat back on, the sound decisive and final. We ride for vengeance. As Billy and his gang prepared their horses, checking the cinched straps and topping off their ammunition, Tom O'Folliard pointed sharply across the street. Boss, look! Over by the livery. The two with the blue neckerchiefs. They ain't buying horses, they're watching the door. Billy followed the line of sight. Two hard-looking men, armed with Winchester rifles, were leaning against the livery stable wall, pretending to talk, but their eyes were fixed on the trading post. Their hands never left their gun butts. Those are Maxwell's men, not Garrett's deputies, but his hired guns. They were watching Sam and Rebecca. They wanted to make sure she didn't talk. They knew I was the only one she'd send a message to. Dirt Jake spat on the ground, the dust instantly absorbing the moisture. They saw us ride up, boss. They know why we're here. The word is out. Then the clock is ticking, boys. They'll ride out to warn Coyne and Garrett before the sun goes down. We're not hunting in secret anymore. We're in a race. Billy mounted his horse, his eyes narrowed to slits against the dust and the fading light. We ride hard now. We get into the mountains, figure out where those two snakes are holed up, and we kill the lookouts on our way. The hunt has started, and we're already behind. The four men rode out of Fort Sumner at a breakneck speed, leaving the two watchers scrambling to follow, the sound of their departure swallowed by the rising wind. The gang had outpaced the lookouts and holed up deep in the rugged, pine-scented Manzano Mountains. The night was cold, clear, and quiet, a stark relief from the dusty heat of the flats. They sat around a low fire, the shadows dancing on the rocky outcrops. The smell of burning juniper wood was sharp and clean. We lost those two hounds easily, but they'll report back to Coyne or Garrett by morning. We have maybe 24 hours before they fortify, Billy stated, sharpening his large hunting knife with deliberate strokes. The scrape of steel on stone was rhythmic and cold. Our targets are Slim Coyne, the foreman who beat Jesse, and Pat Garrett, the one who pulled the trigger. Garrett is the lion, Coyne is the jackal. We take the jackal first, Charlie summarized. Coyne won't be far from Maxwell's ranch. The 777 ranch is huge, boss. Dozens of hands. We can't hit a ranch head-on, Dirt Jake cautioned, reloading his Winchester. The familiar metallic sound brought a grim comfort. Coyne manages the operation. He's not living in the colonel's house. He'll be at the main corral or the cattle pens. We need to know the layout, the guards, and where Coyne sleeps. Billy turned to Tom O'Folliard, whose nervous energy was usually channeled into recklessness, but now served as intense focus. Tom, you're the best rider. You go back near the 777. Don't go near the main ranch. Find the line shacks and the cattle trails. Find a disillusioned hand, someone Coyne pushed too hard. Buy him a drink, pump him for information on Coyne's schedule and the ranch layout. I'll be back by midnight tomorrow, boss. I'll ride fast and keep low. Take nothing but your pistol and a knife. Don't draw attention. We need clean information, not a saloon brawl. Tom O'Folliard rode for hours, keeping to the shadowed canyons and dry riverbeds. He located a dilapidated line shack miles from the main ranch, where a few tired, dusty hands were taking a break. Tom approached them, his demeanor disarmingly casual. He bought them a bottle of rye whiskey and some tobacco. He talked about cattle, not outlaws. Say, Heard the 777 is run tight these days. That foreman Coyne, he got a heavy hand. Tom asked the oldest ranch hand, a man named Willie. Willie spat tobacco juice into the dirt. Coyne? That bastard is meaner than a rattler in a boot. He thinks he's sheriff. He's the reason that poor sap Jesse Reed got himself killed. Coyne beat him like he was training a horse, just to scare the other settlers. Where does Coyne keep his precious hide when he ain't whipping folks? He stays in the East Outpost, 2 miles from the main house. It's built into the ridge, overlooks the Pecos. Says he needs to keep an eye on the river crossing, always has 2, sometimes 3 boys with him. Drinks heavily, thinks he's untouchable. Tom got the information he needed, confirming the location and giving them the crucial detail. Coyne was isolated and arrogant. Tom returned before dawn, exhausted but triumphant. The information was laid out on the shale map. East Outpost, heavily built but isolated. Coyne has 3 men with him. They'll be asleep or drunk before midnight. That's a weakness we can use. The outpost is built into the ridge. That means no rear entrance. We go in through the windows or the roof. Billy studied the rough map, his mind working quickly, calculating risks and angles. Jake, you and Charlie take the main door. Wait for my signal. I'm going in through the roof, or maybe a window. I want Coyne alone for a moment. He needs to know why he's dying. The gang spent the day meticulously preparing, cleaning their weapons until they gleamed, checking the silence of their boots, and packing only essential gear: knives, revolvers, and ropes. They were moving from simply being outlaws to being agents of a fierce personal retribution. This is the first step, boys. We take Coyne. We get the satisfaction of the small victory. Then we prepare for Garrett. We capture Coyne, bring him out alive. I want to know where Garrett went immediately after the murder. The sheriff won't tell his deputies everything, but he'd trust Coyne. What about the 3 men with Coyne? Charlie asked, oiling his rifle one last time. They get a warning. If they draw on us, they get the same cold steel Jesse got, but we prioritize Coyne. Remember the promise. As the sun began to sink, casting long purple shadows over the Manzano peaks, the 4 men mounted their horses. The air was charged with a heavy professional anticipation. They were riding towards the first blood, and they all knew that once it spilled, there was no turning back. Let's ride. It's time to start earning our reputation again. The East Outpost sat nestled against a high, rocky ridge overlooking the Pecos River. It was a sturdy, single-story adobe building, but its isolation made it vulnerable. Only 1 lantern burned inside, casting a sickly yellow glow through the single front window. The distant sound of the flowing river was a low, constant murmur. Billy, Charlie, and Dirt Jake positioned themselves silently in the shadows of the ridge, about 50 yards from the outpost. Tom O'Folliard was covering the rear on horseback, watching the trail for any approaching riders. All quiet. They're either asleep or deep in a bottle, Jake whispered, his voice rough. Charlie, Jake, move to the door. Wait for the signal. I'm taking the window, Billy ordered, pulling a heavy bandana over the lower half of his face. He checked the action of his derringer one last time. Billy moved to the side of the adobe structure, the cold adobe rough beneath his gloved hands. He peered through the small, dirty window. Slim Coyne, 30s, a greasy man with a mean face, was slumped over a table, snoring loudly, a half-empty bottle of whiskey nearby. 2 other ranch hands were asleep in hammocks slung across the room. Billy took a thick, oiled piece of canvas and covered the window to block the light, then quickly and silently smashed the glass pane with the butt of his Colt. The sound was muffled by the canvas and the distant river. He slipped through the opening, landing lightly on the packed earth floor. The air inside was foul with whiskey and unwashed bodies. Billy moved straight for Coyne. He didn't use a gun. He slammed his elbow hard into Coyne's throat, knocking the man off the chair and pinning him instantly to the floor. Coyne woke up with a muffled choke, his eyes widening in terror when he saw the masked figure. He tried to scream, but the pressure on his throat cut off the sound. The 2 sleeping hands bolted upright. What the hell? Charlie and Jake burst through the front door, guns drawn. The loud sound of the door splintering and the sudden appearance of two armed figures froze the ranch hands. "Hands high! Don't move or you're dead!" Charlie barked. The ranch hands, startled and facing an intimidating wall of steel, quickly complied, their fear overcoming their duty. Billy, meanwhile, dragged the struggling Coin to his feet, pulling the bandana down slightly. Coin recognized the face. "Bonnie, you ain't supposed to be here. Garrett's troubles are coming. Right now, your troubles are me, Coin. You beat Jesse, my kin, like a dog. Now you tell me why Garrett killed him. Where did the sheriff ride after he pulled the trigger?" Coin's face was slick with sweat and fear. The cruelty he showed Jesse had vanished, replaced by the terror of facing the infamous kid. "He rode to the old silver mine, I swear. It's abandoned, 20 miles south. Garrett didn't want the body found. He met Maxwell's personal attorney there, Judge Blackwell. They were sealing the deal. They left a document there, a transfer." "A document? What kind of document?" "The land transfer. Maxwell pays Garrett. The whole deal is written down. Garrett keeps the paper at the mine. That was the price for the murder. The damn thing ties the sheriff and the syndicate together." Billy's grip tightened. This wasn't just justice. This was evidence, a chance to destroy Garrett's corrupt authority for good. But the mention of the silver mine raised an alarm. "Is the mine guarded? Who is there?" Coin looked away, his jaw trembling. "Yes, Garrett knew this document was too dangerous. He left 3 men there, personal guards. They were told to kill anyone who rides up, no questions asked. It's a trap, Bonnie. They're waiting for Blackwell to return." Billy released his grip, stepping back. The realization of the trap was a cold jolt. Garrett was more cunning than he thought. He had left a paper trail, but guarded it with a lethal ambush. "Jake, tie up these 2 hands. Tight. Charlie, we need to move. This changes everything." Billy looked at Coin, who was now pleading, the words tumbling out in a rush of desperation. "You got the information, kid. You know where the proof is. Let me go. I'll ride out of the territory. You don't need to kill me." Billy knelt down, looking the man who beat his cousin in the eye. "You chose the whip, Coin. You chose to make a mockery of a dying man. My cousin suffered because of your cruelty. That debt can only be paid one way." Billy drew his large hunting knife, the blade reflecting the dim lantern light. He brought the knife down, quick and brutal. Justice. They left the outpost quickly, the bodies of Coin and the captured ranch hand hidden. The last remaining ranch hand was tied up, left alive to tell the tale and spread the fear. "We ride for the old silver mine. We have to beat Blackwell to that document, and we have to be ready for Garrett's ambush. That document is the sheriff's heart, and we're going to rip it out." They mounted their horses and disappeared into the fading night, their immediate mission accomplished, but the true confrontation, the attack on Garrett's power, now imminent. The old silver mine was a desolate collection of abandoned shacks and a heavily timbered mine entrance carved into the side of a steep, arid mesa. The sun was high and unforgiving, baking the rocks and making the dry sagebrush brittle. Billy and his gang were hidden behind a distant ridge, studying the mine through a telescope. 3 guards, boss, just like Coin said. They're sitting in the shade near the main shaft entrance, heavy Winchesters. "They're not moving," Tom reported, his voice tight. "They're waiting for Judge Blackwell. They're expecting a lone, elderly lawyer, not 4 gun-heavy outlaws. That's our advantage." "How do we approach, Billy?" "We ride in. They'll cut us down." "That slope is a killing field," Charlie advised, checking his rifle sight. Billy pointed to a narrow, overgrown fissure that ran horizontally across the mesa, about 20 feet above the mine entrance. "That fissure. It leads right over the main shaft. We go up the ridge on the far side, rope across the fissure. Charlie and I go across. We drop down right on top of them. Jake and Tom, you stay mounted, covering the retreat." "That's suicide, boss." "One wrong step and you fall 50 feet, Tom protested. "It's the only way to bypass their sight lines. We need that document, boys. That paper is the only thing that can kill Garrett without a gunfight." They executed the plan with the precision born of long experience. They climbed the ridge, their boots scrambling on the loose shale. Billy and Charlie secured thick ropes across the fissure, a terrifying 100-foot gap over sharp rocks. Billy and Charlie moved across the rope using their hands and knees, the wind threatening to rip them free. Below them, the three guards remained oblivious, playing cards in the shade. They reached the other side and rappelled silently down the sheer rock face, landing with soft thuds just above the mine entrance. "Now, Charlie!" They burst around the corner, guns drawn. "Don't move!" The three guards scrambled, dropping their cards, reaching desperately for their Winchesters. They were surprised, but they were professionals. The air erupted with gunfire. Billy fired both Colts, hitting two of the guards before they could even level their rifles. Charlie took out the third with a precise shot to the chest. The short, brutal fight was over in less than 5 seconds. The scent of gunpowder hung acrid and thick in the hot air. "Clear! Find the document!" They rushed into the mine shaft. The air inside was cold and dank. They found a small, locked metal box tucked beneath a loose timber near the entrance. Charlie smashed the lock with the butt of his pistol. Inside, they found a single, official-looking document detailing the land transfer and a signed, notarized note from Colonel Maxwell to Pat Garrett, confirming the payment for services rendered on the Reed claim. The proof. "We got it! Let's ride!" They climbed back up the ridge and reunited with Jake and Tom. As they rode hard away from the mine, they heard the distinct sound of galloping horses approaching rapidly from the south trail. "Ryder! And he's got company!" Tom shouted. It wasn't Blackwell. It was Sheriff Pat Garrett himself, riding with 4 heavily armed deputies. Garrett, having been tipped off by the sole surviving ranch hand from the outpost, had predicted their move and was leading the charge. Garrett saw the outlaws escaping the mine site. "Bonnie, it ends here!" Garrett pulled his Winchester and fired a long-range shot that whizzed past Billy's head. The chase was on, a desperate, brutal race across the rocky, uneven terrain. The deputies fired continuously. Jake dismounted, providing rear cover fire, his rifle cracking like a whip. One of the deputies' horses screamed and fell, throwing the rider. "Keep riding, Jake! We got the proof!" Garrett, however, was closing the distance, his eyes fixed only on Billy. "I killed your cousin, Bonnie, and I'll kill you!" Garrett yelled, his voice carrying over the wind. The confrontation was inescapable. Billy reined in his horse, spinning around to face his nemesis. "Charlie, take the document and ride!" Billy dismounted, drawing his Colts, stepping into the middle of the trail. The final duel. Garrett and his remaining 3 deputies pulled up 50 yards away. The sheriff dismounted, his face a mask of cold, focused rage. "This is it, Bonnie. The law versus the killer. This ain't law, Garrett. This is justice for my kin, and that paper proves you're the killer." Billy didn't wait. He began firing, a barrage of quick, accurate shots. The deputies scattered, ducking for cover. Garrett returned fire, his large Winchester booming. The air was filled with the noise of the battle, the smoke, and the heavy thud of bullets impacting rock and earth. Billy fought with the fierce, focused precision of a man who had nothing left to lose. He downed one deputy and forced the others back. Garrett, surprisingly fast and calm, was aiming steadily. A bullet from Garrett's rifle tore through Billy's jacket, grazing his side. Billy stumbled but returned fire, forcing Garrett to take cover behind his horse. Billy used the moment of cover to remount his horse, wounded but alive. He looked back at Garrett, who was now scrambling for a new position. "This ain't over, Sheriff. The debt is still due, but the world will know your name now." He kicked his horse hard and rode, catching up with his gang, who provided final cover fire until they disappeared into the maze of the Manzano foothills, the document safe. Billy, recovering but still weak, watched from the hills as Charlie Boda slipped back into Fort Sumner. Charlie returned a half-hour later. "It's done, boss. The document is with Judge Milton in Santa Fe, an honest man. The telegrams have been sent. Colonel Maxwell is under investigation. The pressure is on Garrett. He still holds the badge, but his power is poisoned. The whole territory knows he killed Jesse Reed for land." Billy nodded slowly, leaning against a rough stone wall. He had failed to kill the sheriff, but he had achieved something more profound. And Rebecca? She's gone, rode out with Sam Miller. She sent this. Charlie handed Billy the tattered Bible. Inside, Rebecca had scribbled a single message. Paid in blood. May your trail be clean, cousin. Billy felt the weight of the Bible, the symbolic closure of the vendetta. He had answered the call of his kinship not by simply killing a man, but by exposing the rotten foundation of the law that murdered him. He looked out over the vast, unforgiving territory. Pat Garrett was still out there, hungry for revenge, his personal vendetta now fueled by professional necessity. The true duel was still to come, but for now the blood price for Jesse Reed had been paid, and justice, in its complex and savage frontier form, had been served.